All right, good morning. It's nice to see everyone here. As you all have learned, these sessions go quite quickly, so we're going to go ahead and get started right on time. My name is Adriana Kizar, and I'm the director of the Pullias Center at the University of Southern California. Pullias Center, I hope all of you will visit, does a lot of research that supports equity in higher education, as well as students who have been historically marginalized and helping on their path to get through college. And I'm here today to talk about reimagining institutional support for teaching with wonderful Erica Hollis. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Hollis. I'm Assistant Provost for Academic Innovation and Faculty Development at Regis College. I bring to the conversation today a host of experiences from nonprofit, profit, private, public, you name it. I've been at your school, your type of school, unless you are a community college. I have yet to have that pleasure, but I'm still fairly young in my career, so maybe. And so my work has been centered around faculty development. I started off as an instructional designer. I've been a faculty member. So these experiences that we're going to share today, that's what I'm bringing to the conversation. And I use the pronoun she, her, hers. Okay?
Thank you. And I bring to the conversation something a little different, which is I'm a researcher of higher education, but my work has been primarily based on looking at the systems that either support or don't support quality teaching and learning in the classroom. Particularly in recent years, I've been focusing on the trend of the changes in the professoriate towards largely faculty that are off the tenure track, predominantly actually part-time faculty, and looking at the ways that is shaping the teaching and learning environment. So we each bring a different lens to the conversation, which we hope will be really complementary. And our session really builds off, if you remember in the opening plenary, they were talking about that quality teaching and learning in the classroom isn't just about faculty having the motivation to do it. It's about the way we structure the environment so that they can or cannot be successful, to sort of remind us of that issue. So it is behooving upon us as often sort of maybe either administrators who are in the room, sometimes other faculty who play faculty leadership roles, or you in systems offices to play a role in creating those kinds of environments. So to do that today, we are going to first find out who's in the room, so we know a little bit more about how we can aim this conversation to assist you. We're going to have two rapid fire sessions, one that talks about some of the barriers to creating a supportive teaching and learning environment, and then we want to move rather rapidly though into the support systems, things that we can do about those barriers, because there are quite a few barriers that faculty members do face within their institutions, and we want to leave here with you kind of committing to something you might work on at the end. So I'm going to hand it over to Erica to start us off.
Okay. So I know it's early, but here we are, and this is interactive, so check that out. If you would be so kind as to follow us in this journey that we're going to have for you all. We're using Slido. You can just scan the QR code so that you are a part of the conversation as we're talking. And the way that this works is that you can do questions, you can do a Q&A while we're talking, but there will be specific polling questions for you all. So I want to give everyone the opportunity to go ahead and scan the QR code, and I'm going to do a teacher thing and visually scan to see if everyone is about there, if you still have your phones up. I see a few phones still going, so we're okay. I got a thumbs up. I like you already. I don't know your name, but I like you. I see thumbs up in the back. Even our people that are just joining us are kind of getting into the conversation. So I feel like we're at about 90%. Are we all set? Lots of nonverbals. Perfect. Okay, so the first question: why are you in here in this session? There are tons of sessions that you could have gone to. What brings you to reimagining instructional support for faculty? So just take a minute. I'm very comfortable with silence as an introvert. So I will leave you to it. And you can see in the corner, they're already coming in here. So let's see. There's 25 of you that are typing right now. And so here are the things that are coming in. Learn about best practices, gain inspiration, strategies, accepted new roles, CTL. Congratulations, whoever you are. This is where the good needed work needs to happen to better support my faculty. Yes, if you don't teach well, you won't stay. That's very true. So as you all can see, it's kind of categorizing what you all are saying. So like these ideas, teaching, institutions, and faculty. It looks like most of you are speaking about your institution, and some of you are specifically talking about the faculty. Okay. Large universities recognize faculty affect student success. Yes. Peer-to-peer faculty. These are all great things. And we are absolutely excited that you're here because this is going to be a conversation that we will facilitate and give our ideas, but we also want to hear what you all have to say because you bring all of this to the conversation. So that's very important for us and what we're doing. We still have about 3 people, 25 years, congratulations. Structural barriers, yes, curious about new ways to support teaching. I hope that we can touch on that, whoever is curious about that, to be able to give you some ideas and some takeaways from this session. So there's still about 2 people typing. But what I would like to do for the sake of time, this will be captured. You all will be able to follow this past this session. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the next question here. So, given who you are at your various institutions, knowing why you are in this room, can you please help us identify what you perceive to be the barriers to faculty engagement and quality teaching and learning? Time, yes. What else do we have? Time is getting big. So that means multiple people are saying time, right? No incentives, workload, reward, structures, incentives, intentional institutional investment, yes. Large class sizes, exhaustion. There's that time again, professional development, resistance. Research is more important. Culture, I think Adriana is going to talk on the cultural piece. We will talk about many of these things. Isolation, time and resources, focus on faculty development. No space and time for improvement. A lot of these things are related to time. Culture. So here are the big ones that we see, right? No incentives, rewards with an S and a reward just by itself, incentives, and culture. So we are talking about these things as the primary barriers to making sure that our students have the best faculty experience, the best learning experience with their faculty that they can possibly have. Okay, so I'm gonna set us big picture here in terms of barriers and some of the things that you all talked about. So for me, at the center is the workload, right? What do we ask the faculty to do? What does their distribution of effort look like? You all may call it something different at your institution, but typically it involves teaching, right? Are you on a 4-4 load? Are you on a 1-1 load? Do you get a course release for this? Do you get a release, or do you get casual labor to design an online course? Like, what does that look like? Scholarship. Are you publishing? Are you presenting? Some of you are at this conference. Many of you are presenting. How does that factor into your workload, which very much relates to time? And then service. How many committees are you on? How many committees are we asking you to be on? What do you do in your community? Those types of things. These are normally like the 3 pillars that we know about when it comes to academia, right? But then there's this whole other, what I call administrivia kind of things that we ask faculty to do. There are accreditations, there are assessments, there are reports, there are things that have to be done outside of the traditional 3 pillars that we're asking faculty to do. And all of that, those things, what's overlaying all of that are the faculty contracts. So what does their contract look like? Is it 1 semester? Is it 1 year? Is it multi-year? How does that look? So all of these things very much align with what you all said in terms of time. We'll talk about the incentives part in just a bit. Any thoughts on the barriers? Have we missed any barrier so far? Okay. So I did a scan just to see if there were some others. I'll come back to you. Here are some others that we can think of. We heard the plenary session, the lack of knowledge and the scholarship of teaching and learning. We know that's pervasive. I don't need to talk to you all about that. I would be preaching to the choir, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But think about now, faculty are teaching in multiple modalities at the same time. That is cognitively, they're having to shift from being in person, maybe to being online, maybe to having a hybrid kind of situation. Some of you all may have gone to the session yesterday on HighFlex. Maybe you and your faculty are doing things around that. And we also know that mental health is at an all-time high for our students. We know this. There's data, there's research around this. We all know this. Those students are coming into the classrooms with these things, and our faculty are grappling with them, and they're not social workers, they're not mental health experts, they're not counselors. And so what is that doing? That's then increasing their own mental health challenges. So this is something that we really need to think about, and it is a barrier in terms of something that we need to figure out how to have some support systems around these things. And then how many of you are having fun budget discussions right now, like I am? All right, wonderful. So think about the budget, where you may be. Your budget may be in better shape than others, but it's still the narrative that we carry around the budget. Will there be money for this? Is my programming going to get cut? Can we offer incentives for quality online teaching? Even if you have a secure budget, the narrative and the talk around these things still impact how we do quality teaching. A few other things I just want to point out. Adults, students, competing priorities. We know that students are working. We know what the attention span is for an adult. All of those things are being brought into the classroom as well. And so as faculty, we need to figure out how to deal with that, how to work with that. And AQ has some wonderful things around that, right? For those of you who have gone through the effective teaching practices. So there are some tools there. And what about turnover? How many of you have seen just your faculty are just leaving? Yeah, some of them are just leaving higher ed, period. They're not even going to a different school. They're just leaving academia altogether. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't even mention AI, right? I'm not going to get into it. It was a whole session on it yesterday. We could talk about that for hours. But this shift in how we have to reimagine and think about this in a classroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Adriana to talk more.
Thank you so much, Erica, for laying that landscape. So I'm going to talk about something that usually does not get discussed. I think what Erica talked about when I sit in sessions about barriers, they're often the ones that get discussed. But what's often overlooked is that 70% of the faculty don't have, a push to do research or the scholarship. A lot of the cultural issues you all talked about, 70% of them are contingent faculty, 52% of those are part-time, and they're on semester-to-semester contracts. And what I have done is talked to, researched those faculty members and found out, what they face, their experience, and how that makes it very difficult for them to create a quality teaching and learning environment. The first is how we do hiring. A lot of faculty get hired the day of their class, a day before their class. That's not a lot of time to prepare and have a quality class. So our hiring practices are incredibly problematic. It's probably one of the worst ones that the faculty talk to me about. They're reading the things as the students are in real time. They don't have any time to read it ahead of time, to brush up, to do any preparation. They also talk about, we do a lot of hiring of professionals in different areas, and they don't have any teaching experience. And we don't say to them, hey, you've never taught before. Maybe you want to learn a little something about teaching. So we make assumptions that because they're smart professionals working in whatever area that they can teach, which we know isn't necessarily true. So that is a lot around our hiring. But that lack of job security, also faculty say, well, I don't want to spend a lot of time revising or working on a class because I don't know if I'm ever going to teach that again. I don't know if I'm going to be rehired. So all of that makes them less committed to doing assessment, evaluating their courses. This issue of evaluations that were brought up, there's been all these studies where contingent faculty got professional development and then they don't implement it. Why don't they implement it? Because their student evaluations, if they get low student evaluations, they will be fired. So they're never going to innovate or do anything creative in the classroom that might make the students upset because they're going to get fired. So we have all these things. Even if you give the contingent faculty professional development, which they normally don't have access to, don't get paid to go to those professional development, they are terrified to implement any of these ideas. They don't have the freedom to sort of experiment. They have no access to usually the kinds of orientations that other faculty members will get, especially around learning goals for other classes. They don't know what other classes are being offered or how their class connects to another class. So the full-time faculty have that kind of access to information about how things fit together. It's hard to create a quality teaching and learning environment when you don't understand what your class fits into. You have no sort of concept about that. We don't give mentors to them if it's their first semester teaching. Again, if they come from outside, even if they've taught before, it may be different at your institution. They've taught somewhere else, and they don't get any information about how those things would differ. They have they're running in to teach your class. They're running out. They have very little time to maybe spend even a few minutes to talk to students afterwards, which really affects, we've been hearing about how students want accessibility and all of these kind of lovely things, showing you care. It's hard to show you care when you got to run and be at some other institution or some other class or some other responsibility. And they, again, they haven't, because they're not a part of any formal governance, they don't really get to make decisions. And one of the things that's so critical is they'll say, this is just a crazy story, but I've heard so many like this. Okay, faculty members are teaching chemistry. The tenure track faculty pick the book. It's a terrible book. They can't change it. They know it doesn't work, but they have no power or ability to change it. And by the way, remember, the contingent faculty teach largely all of the undergraduate general education courses where most of your tenure track faculty opt out. So they're doing all the most important courses with all the most vulnerable students. They teach all the remedial education. So these kinds of issues are even more significant. They don't have any access to institutional sort of support staff. I've heard terrible stories about how if they're using your Blackboard or your LMS, they've been instructed to take care of the tenure track faculty, and if there's time, they can help the part-time faculty or not, which is usually what happens. And they're only compensated for class time in many, many instances. So all that kind of other time that you hope that they could sort of spend to create a quality teaching and learning environment isn't going to happen. So these are some of the and I haven't even given you all of them, some of the significant barriers that these groups of faculty face. Again, it's much more difficult for part-time faculty than there are about 15% full-time non-tenure track teaching faculty, and their situations are slightly better, but they still face some of these issues. So what we were hoping that we might do let's look at our time. We're good, we're right on time, is just have you for a moment think about, you came in, you do a word cloud that suggested some of the barriers you thought. We'd just like you to think for a moment, right? You've been given these wonderful sort of reflection books. What are kind of the, 1 or 2 or 3 kind of resonant barriers you're thinking about now? Have they changed at all from when you came in? So just take a minute to write that down before we move on to exciting supports we're going to talk about, though, to kind of address some of these issues.
So now into the fun stuff, the moment you've all been waiting for. So what have been, in your experiences, best to support all faculty in quality teaching and learning? We want to know from this collective group what has been working for you at your institutions. Ask me about the provost letter. I do want to ask you about the provost letter. Okay. I'm short, and I don't want to risk jumping down, but we do want to hear your question.
Hi, thank you. My name's Tom. I'm with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And when I was working at a university in Chicago, my system administrator for the LMS came up with this idea. I can't take credit for it. We had the similar challenge of our non-tenure track instructors not feeling safe or comfortable to make shifts and changes for many of the reasons you mentioned. And my sysadmin said, well, if we were playing Monopoly, why couldn't we just get them a get-out-of-jail-free card? And it was horrible framing, but it was a great idea. So what we have now at Northeastern Illinois and Chicago is what we call the provost's letter. Anyone, tenure line or non-tenure, every 2 years can ask that their student ratings be collected but not counted toward employment decisions. The provost writes a letter that goes into their portfolio that says this person is doing an experiment. We do want to encourage innovation in the classroom, and it essentially takes away the consequence that if the student ratings are very poor, they don't get dinged, and if the student ratings are phenomenal, they come back to us and can we undo that? Can that count? But it doesn't count. And so just giving people an opportunity that's outside that tenure and promotion process that allows them to have some safety, some security to experiment. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you. Thank you. Look at all of these ideas that are coming in. Long-term programming, semester-long, year-to-year. I see faculty learning communities came up. Long-term planning is what seems to be happening. Orientation, learning groups, highlighting faculty as campus leaders, which they are, and we should, right? Taking PD online, listening, communities of practice, all of these things that I hope many of you are doing, plan to do, or will be doing at your institution. They're still coming in, all hands PD days for faculty. Yes, the student ratings, we know they are biased. Yes, research has proven that. Listening. These are all wonderful things that we're going to talk about a bit more. And then we want to hear from you all again on what you may or may not be able to take away and do at your own institution. So that's kind of where we want to leave the conversation. So I'm going to, just for the sake of time, move on and talk about some of the things that I've seen in my experiences with doing faculty development and professional development for most of my career. And the one thing is, it cannot be a one-off. Hello, it cannot be a one-off. Faculty need systemic professional development. They need a plan. Non-tenure track, tenure track, instructor, all the way up to full professor. Deans need plans too. Chairs need plans too. What is your plan for the individuals that are at your institution? Our students have plans, right? We create a curriculum plan and we move them through a curriculum. They matriculate and they go on to do wonderful things. But what about you? What about the person sitting next to you? Do you have a plan for what you're doing in academia? Or are you just floating around, just hoping that, well, so-and-so is going to retire in 3 years and I'll just step right into being chair of that department because that's how it works in my institution. And for some of you, that may be the case. And some of you may be very strategic and have a board of directors for your career like I do, and may be planning that. I'm not sure. But what the point that I want to make here is that in general, faculty need professional development, learning communities. We know they work. Several of you said communities, so we know that they work. New faculty networks. So she was mentioning orientations. I do new faculty networks for new faculty that span the entire year, right? So they come in, they get to talk to the president during their first semester at our institution. They get to meet with the provost. They get to do all these things. They get to meet with the chairs of the promotion and tenure committee so they know who those people are as they are new and joining the campus. These things continuous. They go on for a year. After they complete that new faculty network, they then, guess what, mentor new faculty that's coming in the next year as someone that has gone through the process that's doing that. AQ. Most of you are familiar with AQ, the reason why we're here. We also use Quality Matters at my institution. And so we use the rubric and we use some of those professional development opportunities that they offer as a subscribing member. One thing that I have found that works for a lot of faculty and a lot of institutions is having a common read and being able to discuss it. So some of your first year students may have a common read. Have you considered doing the same thing with your faculty? It could be the same book. Could be a different book. Think about it. That's something that usually can be done economically. We're talking about a common read. It may be OER. It may be a physical book. It may be an article. Consider it. Lunch and learns. Allow faculty to be able to share. Allow staff to be able to share with their faculty so that they can learn from each other. So one common thing that all of these bullet points have in line, they promote community. And we know that is a large part of having quality teaching and learning for our students. They need to feel like they're a part of a community too. And when they do, I've seen it so many times be infectious, right? And then it just moves on, it transfers over to their learning, and over into their teaching experience. So those are broad terms in terms of some of the things that you can be doing. I know these things work because I've seen them. I have data to support these, okay? Individual faculty plans. Sometimes in the past, and I think it was the plenary, one of the speakers said, if you went to the teaching and learning centers, usually because you're in trouble, you had bad student evaluations, right? So they create I'll just call it an IEP for you as a faculty member. And you come and talk to someone like me or somebody in my department, and we talk with you and we work with you on those things. But what about just having an IEP for everybody? Novel idea. The other thing that I will leave you with is having a toolbox or resources that faculty can access 24/7. So what does that look like? Is it a website that they can go to? Is it some type of AI situation where they can ask a question around teaching and learning if they have it? But give some thoughts. And do they know where to go? So here's my thing. I have a team. I run a Center for Instructional Innovation. We create all these things. And then we get emails from faculty about, do you know anything about this? Can you help me with this? And we're like, here's this whole website over here. Why are you not going to the website? We had to go on a marketing campaign. I went to department meetings, school meetings, talked about it at their faculty meetings. They allowed me to have 5 whole minutes to talk about it at a full faculty meeting, which was very impressive for me. I was quite excited about that. So these are some of the things that I want you all to definitely consider. Thank you for that. And then support in terms of funding. compensation. You all already know this. How are we going to do this? In the plenary, someone mentioned that we don't have consensus, right? Consensus on how we define and look at quality teaching. Well, in the consensus, part of the issue is we don't know how to give funds for quality teaching. So I'm not proposing that we're going to figure this out in this room, but what I am proposing is that you can figure out how to do it at your school in some kind of way. You can start small and then grow, but definitely consideration. Mentoring, we know that mentoring works. Formal mentoring, more systematic, obviously, but also informal mentoring works as well. And for those of you who are in schools that have very strict or very prescribed tenure and promotion processes, make sure that it's clear for the faculty. How do they actually move from one step to another? So at my institution, we do have tenure, but we also have steps that you can move up within, instructor, assistant, and professor. Faculty don't always know, I found, how do they get to the next step? Is it time? Is it student evaluations? What is it? How do I know when I'm ready to get to the next step? Or is it just going to happen to me? Someone knows that I've been doing a great job for 3 years and all of a sudden I get a step increase. It does not work like that. Do they know? Do you know? Make it crystal clear for everyone. And of course, you all have said this in the word cloud before, recognition. How are we recognizing the faculty and the quality that they're doing? Someone wrote about campus leaders. They are campus leaders. How do we highlight that? Are you working with your marketing department to highlight that? Are there social media stories that you can be doing? Do you have a faculty ambassador program or something along those lines? And of course, we've talked about this at comprehensive orientation that goes all year. And then there's follow-up the next year. We don't drop them like a hot potato when they become a sophomore, right? We want to keep our students. We want to keep the retention. We want to keep the faculty because it's very expensive to recruit and retain faculty, right? To recruit them. So we want to keep them. How do we do that? What systems are you putting in place to be able to do that? Okay? These are some of my thoughts, and I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Erica. So I'm going to leave you with some big picture points that may be obvious at this point, which is Erica's pointed out some of the supports that are needed for all faculty, but it is, in many ways, I'll say largely for tenure track faculty, because the issues are so much more expansive for contingent faculty. So things that you may not think about, like a livable wage, the psychological toll of not knowing if you can pay your rent or eat food might affect the way you have the ability to teach and what you can give to your students. It is existential when I talk to these faculty about I talk to my students about how we're both hungry and come to the classroom hungry. And that is like a scary thing that happens in our classrooms. The average pay for contingent faculty is $22,000 a year. They make less than most fast food workers in this country. So this is a very real thing that is happening on our campuses. The other is simple things like a shared office space. We're talking about, you want to say like community. So I'm saying these things that seem tangential. How can you have community when you just run onto a campus and then run out and you have nowhere to sit? You're not going to develop any community. So I've had faculty just break down in tears saying they provided a shared space, even if it's just like they share a desk with 20 other people who use that same desk, that they can sit down somewhere and there's other faculty around that they could chat with about teaching. They have no ability to do that otherwise. So these seem like things that have nothing to do with teaching and learning, but this whole list is all things that significantly impact even things that seem far afield, their ability. So the issues are so much more greater and systemic that you have to think about in terms of supporting contingent faculty members. So I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm just trying to hint at some of the things you may not have thought about and how they're impacting faculty members' ability to create a quality teaching and learning environment. So, what you can do is, kind of reverse all these, right? Like think about offering the proper orientation. Think about finding out. You have to survey faculty to find out, is this their first semester teaching? So you might offer them a mentor. So campuses that I talk with that do this well, identify and assign either a course coordinator. Here's a contact. All of you faculty that are teaching intro biology, here's a faculty member who will answer all your questions, just even somebody for them to know to go to. So some of these fixes are simple. They don't cost a lot of money. I think when I first presented this work, people would be like, it's overwhelming, we can't afford it, we're gonna do nothing. That's kind of like the response. And so we came up with this guide on the Delphi site. It's the project that I direct, where you can get a lot of resources on this, is called the Delphi Project on the Changing Faculty and Student Success. And we have this one called Dispelling the Myth. It's a resource you can look at that's how inexpensive all of these things are to do, what they cost, we cost them out. And so that you can see that for very little sort of marginal money and being creative, as the gentleman back there gave with like the provost letter example, some of these things don't really cost anything. They're just like rethinking your processes. So I just want to suggest to you that you can invert sort of all the systems that I pointed out that aren't working for these faculty. You can come up with creative, innovative, and low-cost solutions to reverse those. Work with, for example, your enrollment management office. They can do better at our hiring. I've seen campuses that when they take it, their accreditors, for example, take it seriously and tell them they have to be able to hire earlier. They're able to hire earlier. So, these things are we're not being pushed on them. And when we are, we can come up with some really wonderful solutions. Oh, thank you. One of the other resources we have on the website, it talks about how you can create a learning culture. What are the kinds of things that you can change and develop? There's also even an assessment tool on there, so you can give it to departments, and they can have the faculty respond and assess what their opportunities are and what kind of culture they think they have within their different departments and units. And it goes from destructive to neutral to inclusive to learning. And learning's where the faculty are enabled to create a quality teaching and learning environment. So just if you even want to do some assessment to know about that. And if you want to be pushed even further than just tweaking your existing faculty models, you can think about, like, the more systemic way to do this is to rethink your contracts. So instead of going with your existing contracts, and there are many new models, there are multi-year contracts for faculty instead of the semester to semester or year to year. So campuses are using 3 to 5 year contracts for contingent faculty. That's one way to extend and have them be much more a part of your communities. So that's one push. But there's also teaching intensive tenure track models. So how do you rethink the tenure track roles? So some campuses, like Worcester Polytech Institute, has moved their to a tenure track line for teaching. We have an award that we give out of our center, and it's for campuses that are doing these innovative kinds of things that help support contingent faculty, coming up with new models that help support much more systemic solutions so that we're not piecemealing and patchworking these things together. This hasn't been talked about that much here, but there are these other kinds of contracts called discipline-based education researchers. So they're individuals who become scholars in biology or chemistry of the teaching of that discipline. It's very big in the STEM disciplines and increasingly growing. Many more campuses are starting to create these positions and hire individuals. In medical schools and dental schools, they've been doing these in kind of experiments with not having the same kind of divisions between tenure track and tenured faculty, and giving a lot more sort of flexibility in their contracts over time. It's an interesting model that's been very successful. And then Boyer's names have been mentioned here many times, but Boyer came up with this idea of creativity contracts where faculty members, even on the tenure track, could switch over and say, I'm going to concentrate on teaching for the next 5 years and redo the curriculum in our department so that various individuals can focus on teaching and learning, whether they're non-tenure track or tenure track. So there's all kinds of ways that we can be innovative in this work. So I want to potentially push you farther. I also did a national survey to look at where do people think the professoriate should go in the future? What should the future of the faculty look like? And they said it should look like tenure track or non-tenure track. We have all the ideas wrong. So if you really want to be pushed, the faculty of the future should be something totally different. And they came up with this idea of the scholarly educator. So it's one that's essentially focused on teaching, but they keep up with their scholarship. They don't have original research as sort of their primary responsibility, but they keep up with their discipline by going to conferences. And then I can't get into all this because we have so little time, but if you're interested in really thinking about where the faculty of the future could be and maybe contributing to moving your institution to that, I really suggest you look at a report we have that's called The Professoriate Reconsidered. And it really dives into how there is consensus from board members, policymakers, faculty, unions, all levels of administrators that this is where we should be going. So there's actually a lot of consensus that how the faculty role is defined right now doesn't do much to support our mission of teaching and learning. So, thank you. And here's some resources to think about that. And we're going to, with our remaining 2 minutes, I think I'm going to have us move straight to the commitment instead of reflecting on supports. But if there is a few minutes here at the end where you all want to also share something about supports, we'd love to hear from you. Sorry, we're running out of time.
That's okay. So we're going to skip over this. Here is your time to do your work. What is one thing, not all the things she had on the screen, one thing that you will do to improve faculty engagement in the next 2 weeks? We gave a lot of ideas. What's one thing you will do in 2 weeks? What's one thing you will do next semester? Thinking out. I want you to email yourself or put a calendar invite in Outlook before you leave this room about whatever the one thing is that you will be doing in 2 weeks, and actually hold yourself accountable. And if you didn't do it, push it out another 2 weeks and do it for real. Pick something to do next semester. What will you do? Tell someone that they can hold you accountable. You can email me. I'll hold you accountable. I love that kind of stuff. I love it. I love working with faculty. It's what I love to do. And so I want you all to spend some time really thinking about what you might do with the few minutes or the lack of time that we have left, because this is where we end. The last slide just has our contact information if anyone would like that. But I'll leave you with this. And if anyone has a final thought, I would love to hear it. Yes. Whew. Hold on. I'm going to do this. Woo. You're special. I did that.
I feel it. Impressive. Yeah. So thank you. A number of years ago, one of our faculty fellows did a survey of all of our part-time faculty. And one of the key findings was that the university was actually doing a fairly good job of including them, making them feel a sense of belonging. Where it broke down was within their individual units, where they felt unseen, where they felt unsupported. And so institutional level commitments are great as long as it goes down to the unit level. That's really key, I think.
Wonderful.
The scary thing that I hear is that at most institutions, their only connection in life is the department, that they don't connect to the overall institution. So a lot of time what you do at an institutional level will never translate down to them. So that's another challenge with this issue. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, yeah.
I would also encourage people to think not just about the incoming faculty, but the senior late career faculty, to make sure. I ran a retreat for 5 years for late and senior career faculty, and several institutions participated in it. Eventually, we had faculty from all over the country coming because there was nothing else for faculty at that stage of their career. And it was all based on reflection, renewal, and transforming your teaching, because I work in a teaching center, so I had to stick to that mission. But it was shocking to me how deeply they were craving that community and that safe space to share the challenges that they were having, not just in their teaching, but in their attachments to their institutions, and how normalizing that and having safe spaces to talk about ways to change that, but also the realization that every university, we had every kind of university, from HBCUs to small private liberal arts to large University of North Carolina system participants. Change is the norm, and it's not just your institution that's horrible. And it helps so many people feel more empowered. I mean, I was just stunned at the emotional needs that these faculty had and had not had a place to share.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Oh, yeah, one more. This is my exercise portion.
Going to say you're getting your steps in. I just want to echo what my colleague just said. There was a really good article many years ago by L. Lee Knefelkamp, and it was called Seasons of the Academic Life. And that faculty have different seasons, and based on those seasons, they have different intellectual, professional needs. And I think, I don't have the reference to the article now, but it's really important to look at the different seasons. A new faculty member is not going to need the same things as a tenured faculty member, as a faculty member that is midway in their career, as a faculty member that is later in their career. So when you think about institutional renewal and faculty retention, think about who you have in your faculty and what their needs might be at the different seasons of their professional life.
And don't forget your contingent faculty as well when you're thinking about this. Yeah, University of Denver is one of the Delphi winners, and they just set up career phase professional learning communities for their contingent faculty, because they just started a promotional track. So, because many campuses are trying to make these changes, which are great, but now they have these promotional tracks, and they've never done anything to think about how they would support contingent faculty through those stages as they have their tenure track. Anyone else? We are probably over time. So thank you for all making your commitments. Thanks for Erica for joining me. Thank you all for being here.